Scott Hall was trained by Hiro Matsuda in Florida and first started working in the Carolinas for the Crockett's in 1984. Hall trained concurrently with Danny Spivey, and the two broke into the business together as a tag team called the American Starship. Hall's first name here was as Starship Coyote. The team didn't last long in the Carolinas, and they were sent off by Crockett into the smaller Central Territories to hone their craft. Hall and Spivey split at some point, and by 1985, Hall finds himself working for Vern Gagne in the AWA. In the AWA, Hall's name was changed to Scott Coyote Hall, and then to Magnum Scott Hall. I guess the name was a play off of Magnum PI, which had already been redone at this point with Magnum TA, but hey, this was Vern Gagne we are talking about. It was here that Hall had teamed up with Curt Hennig, and the two became the AWA Tag Team Champions. And while Hall was earmarked for big things, Hennig ended up going over more and becoming the AWA champion. While Hall exited the company in 1987, Hall then had his first WWF tryout in August of 1987 and did not end up getting signed. However, he would then take his talents to Memphis and the USWA, and coinciding with the USWA run, Hall decided to take his talents to Japan for the first time, and Hall did okay in Japan and had work over there through 1988. And at the tail end of the 80s, Hall caught the attention of Jim Ross, who brought him into WCW as Scott Gator Hall. This run went nowhere, and Hall was out of the company after a 6-month stint, and Hall would return to Japan as well as wrestle in the CWA as Cowboy Scott. In April of 1991, Hall was welcomed back into the fold as the company had fully evolved into World Championship Wrestling, or WCW, and he was renamed the Diamond Stud as he came in as an associate of Diamond Dallas Page. Page is known to have suggested the idea of his toothpick gimmick. The Diamond Stud was definitely essentially an under-evolved Pokemon version of what Razor Ramon would become. Hall and Page morphed into a whole stable of guys known as the Diamond Mine, where the two were joined by Scotty Flamingo and Vinny Vegas. Vegas, of course, would become Hall's best friend for life, Kevin Nash. The group was fun, but Hall struggled to get past a lower mid-card status, and he ended up leaving for the WWF in 1992. And that's when Hall became the iconic character of Razor Ramon, which was inspired by the movie Scarface. Hall as Razor Ramon would be in the right place at the right time, as there was a big Survivor Series main event upcoming, and he was to be teamed with Ric Flair to face Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior. Now, the Warrior ends up getting fired before the match, so Curt Hennig, who was then Flair's counterpart, was turned face to make the match Mr. Perfect and Savage versus Flair and Ramon. All of this just for the match to lead to a disqualification finish, but that's besides the point. Ramon was then booked into a marquee pay-per-view main event title match against Bret Hart, which ended up as a losing effort, but it was still quite a way to bring Razor Ramon into the company. Although after that, Razor Ramon floundered for the next few months, but then in May of 1993, he began a memorable program with Sean Waltman, aka the 1-2-3 Kid, and this led to a Razor Ramon babyface turn with a key program against Ted DiBiase at SummerSlam at 1993. And Razor did very well as a babyface and ended up the Intercontinental Champion when Shawn Michaels had to vacate the title due to a failed drug test, and Razor won a battle royal final of sorts over Rick Martel to win the title. And when Michaels returned, he assumed that he was the champion that had never lost, and for a brief period there were two champions, which of course led to the iconic ladder match at WrestleMania 10 in 1994. Razor Ramon became pretty synonymous with the Intercontinental title at this point, having memorable feuds over the title with Diesel and Jeff Jarrett. And this took Hall into 1996, where he was feuding over the title with Goldust, and on paper the two were set for a match for WrestleMania 12. However, this is where the story takes a turn, because pretty much simultaneously Hall fails a drug test and ends up giving notice to the WWF that he was leaving for WCW. And both Hall and Nash would end up leaving the company, effectively splitting up the infamous Clique, which they were a part of with Shawn Michaels, 123 Kid, and Triple H. And the stories of the Clique are infamous and can be a whole other video, quite frankly. But in earnest, just know that the thing to know about these guys has the impression that they pretty much ran the show behind the scenes in the years of like 95 and 96. This would lead to the infamous curtain call at Madison Square Garden, Razor and Diesel's way out of the company for WCW. And Hall would use his real name here along with his buddy Kevin Nash, and the two would go on to form the NWO storyline. The story turned things around for WCW, and Hall was at his apex of popularity as a wrestler. And Hall ultimately would be burning the candle at both ends during this time. And come 1998, he was sent to rehab for causing a loaded scene at a WCW Nitro. His personal problems were then used as a storyline in WCW shortly after that. Scott Hall was never really quite the same performer or guy after this period of time. He was on and off WCW TV until the company went under in 2001. From there, Hall, Nash, and Hogan were welcomed back to the WWE as the NWO, and Hall would work a feature program with Steve Austin at WrestleMania 18, and Hall pushed hard to go over and get his career back on track, but due to the fact that Austin felt degraded on the card to work with him in the first place, there was just no way this was going to happen. Substance issues would creep up again for Hall shortly after, and then he was on the outs with the company. And in late 2002, he began working for TNA off and on, who I suppose turned a blind eye to his issues just to let him work. His issues, though, would come and go and lead to not very long stints with the company at a time. And in 2010, TNA released him for the final time as things escalated with Hall at a bar to a point where the authorities were called, and Scott Hall was placed under arrest. Shortly after the TNA run, Hall made an appearance in an indie show that was so bad that literally the world of wrestling could just no longer ignore the shape that Hall was in. He was basically carried to the ring by event staff, and the fact that the promoters let him go out there like that was just a damn shame. And it was shortly after that Hall needed to get his act together, and was helped into doing that by Diamond Dallas Page, who in a similar fashion as how he worked with Jake the Snake, DDP worked miracles with Hall and helped to keep him on the straight and narrow. Scott Hall was able to get his act together for long enough to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, which was a huge moment for him. Public perception is that Hall was miraculously cured of his demons. However, sadly, this was just not the case. As in the situation with most addiction, it's easier to kick with support around you to keep you clean. But Hall would go in and out of sobriety throughout the last few years of his life, and according to his close friend Sean Waltman, aka the 123 Kid, he believes that the social isolation that came with the worldwide pandemic in 2020, where Hall was forced to isolate, proved to not be a great effect on him, and he struggled mightily for the last couple years of his life. He was said to have lost significant weight, and once again Dallas Page was brought in to try to help him out. This led us into March of 22, when we sadly lost Scott Hall. Scott Hall passed away officially due to complications from a hip surgery. Of course, this is all still very fresh in our minds as I'm doing this video here now in the middle of March of 2022. I know Scott Hall was a huge influence on me, just seeing him, literally growing up on him as Razor Ramon, and then just the utter shock I felt when he walked out on Nitro that night is definitely something I'll never forget. What I want to know, folks, is your favorite Razor Ramon Scott Hall memories. go ahead and leave those down there in the comments for me. On the way out, make sure you leave a like on the video and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Until next time, we see you here on Pro Wrestling Planet.